months. Well, one Fargo man will be spending at least the next 13 years in prison for stabbing a woman back in February. 28-year-old Tyler Molnar pleaded guilty to attempted murder, aggravated assault, and theft. And this morning, a Cass County judge sentenced Molnar to 20 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole after 13 years. Now, on February 12th, witnesses called police after they say they saw a woman jump out of an old red van on 42nd Street South while that van was moving at about 30 miles per hour. When police arrived, they say they found the victim bloodied and hysterical. Court documents say that the victim was sleeping in the van when Molnar started yelling at her and threw her phone out the window. He then stabbed her in the shoulder and back. When the victim asked Molnar to stop, he told her that he was going to kill her. And one man will be spending the next year on supervised probation after an early morning stabbing of a Fargo man earlier this year. Fargo police responded to the intersection of 25th Street and Demores Drive South on May 6th after a 24-year-old man called 911 saying that he had been stabbed. 23-year-old Jonathan Peterson was arrested in Beltrami County, Minnesota just 3 days later and charged with robbery and aggravated assault. A plea agreement with prosecutors dropped the first charge and amended the second to a misdemeanor count of assault. A judge sentenced Peterson to 1 year in jail and would serve 135 days. Peterson was also given credit for the 135 days he's already served behind bars, and as long as Peterson abides by the guidelines of his supervised probation for the next year, he will avoid further jail time. And North Dakota officials are saying that it's possible that late Attorney General Wayne Stenjum's emails are not gone for good. The State Information Technology Department plans to hire Planet Technologies, a tech company based in Maryland, to begin efforts to recover more than 20 years of emails. Stenjum's emails were deleted just days after he died suddenly in January, and NDIT told the state auditor's office in August they had exhausted all efforts of the emails from Microsoft, but communication between the two shows otherwise.
NDIT is asking for Microsoft to write a formal letter saying that Wayne Stenjum's account was no longer available. A security and compliance specialist from Microsoft responded back to NDIT saying just because an account is deleted does not mean the data is gone.
The findings about the emails were part of a larger investigation by the auditor's office into the $1.7 million overrun by the Attorney General's office for a new building. The findings were turned over to the Attorney General's office, who will ask an outside agency to conduct a separate investigation. And while 3 people, all in their 30s, have died after their small plane crashed into a house in northern Minnesota. Officials say that the pilot and 2 passengers died when the plane hit that second floor of the home and landed in the backyard over the weekend in Hermantown. Those living in the house say that it sounded like a bomb went off when the plane hit their home. The plane was just 1.5 miles away from the nearest airport. Officials are now determining what caused that plane to go down. And one of the veterans currently on the honor flight to Washington, D.C. was serving in Germany 50 years ago. September marked the 50th anniversary of the Munich Massacre, an event that made the world think differently about terrorism. It was an attack during the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, West Germany. Valley News Team's Mike Morgan has the story.
Arab guerrillas had invaded the male athletes' housing area, killed 2 Israelis in the pre-dawn raid, claimed 8 hostages.
The Olympic Games of 1972 in Munich were supposed to be opposite of the 1936 Games in Berlin.
And later, at a military airport, as the scene shifted, the other 8 hostages died.
Instead, an estimated 900 million people tuned in to watch the hostage crisis play out on TV. Today, Kenneth Hall is in Washington, D.C. He's with other veterans from North Dakota and Minnesota, touring monuments and memorials. 50 years ago, he was in Germany and on guard, protecting large amounts of ammunition for military weaponry when the terrorist attack took place.
Right, I was scared.
Hall was on duty near Wurzburg, which was some 170 miles away from Munich. He says there was word that the terrorists may go through his area.
I was honestly scared of what could happen, especially being I was guarding the ammo dome.
The events of the Munich Massacre would be limited to the Olympic Village and the Munich airport, but it did open the door to terrorism becoming a new approach to warfare.
Well, I guess I was more worried about going to war after that, because before that I had missed going to Vietnam. So I thought I was home free, but it turns out they can get you anywhere you're at, I guess.
Kenneth Hall finished serving his country a year later and would return to North Dakota. And like so many, we'll never forget what happened 50 years ago during the Munich Massacre. Mike Morkin, Valley News Live.
This group of Honor Flight veterans come from 53 communities in North Dakota and Minnesota, as well as every branch of the military. And they headed to the National Archives, the Navy Memorial, Air Force Memorial, and Arlington National Cemetery to watch the changing of the guard, as well as a guided trolley tour. And stick with Valley News Live throughout the night for Mike Morkin's coverage from Washington, D.C. Well, when it comes to road rage, North Dakota has the least of it in the entire country. A new report from Forbes Advisors asked drivers across the country if they'd ever experienced road rage, tailgating, honking, rude gestures, as well as being cut off. 85% of the drivers surveyed said that they've experienced at least one form of this kind of road rage, but North Dakotans were least likely in the nation to report that another driver had attempted to force their car off of the road, insulted them, or even honked at them. Utah was ranked number 1 as the state with the most confrontational drivers. And well, the Great Plains Food Bank is in their final week of their Stock the Shelves campaign. They're asking for food or financial donations to get more food to distribute in the community. Officials are forecasting that there would be around 1 million pounds of food fewer to distribute this year compared to last. If you'd like to help out, we have a link on the VNL News app. Well, still to come on your news at 4, what parents need to know about a respiratory illness that has CDC officials sounding the alarm.
And temperatures today have been on the mild side, slightly above average, and we'll stay comfortable through this evening. Cloudy skies keep us mild, but big changes by the end of the week. Thursday and Friday, first alert weather days, we're going to turn much colder. I'll have your full forecast details coming right up.